Welcome to Redditamin, your daily dose of Reddit ranting. As a black man, I feel like Black Lives Matter are becoming bullies and are actually hurting the black community by segregating us even further, creating racial divides. First, I'd like to start off by thanking the mods for having a place we can post our opinions, being they may be unpopular everywhere else on Reddit. I sent proof to verify I am who I say I am. My post comes from a place of love. I feel absolutely powerless in what is happening in this country, and I thought I can post my feelings here and hopefully someone can hear me out from a different perspective. I feel people outside the black race think that we all think alike and share the same beliefs, but this is so far from the truth. It's true that he who shouts the loudest gets the most attention, and that is exactly what's happening in our country at the moment. There's millions of African Americans that share the same thoughts as me, but we get chewed out or cancelled when our thoughts stray from the status quo. There's many videos of us speaking out against this, but it doesn't make the news as it goes against the narrative. A little about me before I get into it. I was born and raised in the hood. Newark, New Jersey to be exact. I still live here, not by choice but by necessity. I am not oppressed. Yes, I still live in the city I grew up in. It's not the ghetto by any standard, but it's not the suburbs neither. I have my own apartment, a nice car, and good credit. Am I where I want to be in life? No, not even close. But I'm working towards it. Where I'm at right now is 100% my fault and on me. I'm where I'm at in life because of my life choices. Had nothing to do with anyone else of any race, it was me. And have a plan to get where I want to be, and there's no doubt in my mind that I will get there if I put in the work necessary. I've always been treated with respect by the police. To frame this, I'm not just a black guy, I'm a very dark black guy. The black community comes in all shades from very fair-skinned to very dark-skinned. I fall into the darker category. I've gotten out of more tickets than I've received when being pulled over. I've never been to jail. One time I was put in handcuffs because I had a bench warrant because I didn't pay a tiny ticket I completely forgot about. These cops were respectful the entire time. They even took me to the ATM so I could get money to bail myself out. Lol.it was less than $200. They saw I wasn't a threat and let me out of the handcuffs on the trip to the precinct. When we got there, the officer even apologized and said unfortunately I'd have to put the cuffs back on to walk into the precinct because it was policy. To add, my license was suspended because of the unpaid ticket. But these officers drove me back to my vehicle and said, I can advise you to drive this car, but once we leave you can do what you want. This proves treat people with respect, you'll get the same back. They could have towed my car and left me stranded in the precinct. But they drive me all the way back to my car and let me go. And I was definitely far from home in an area that you'd consider predominantly white, if that's a thing anyway. BLM. I understand that they may have good intentions, but they are going about it the wrong way. They are trying to get demands made by force and violence. I feel as though this is not the way to get things done, as it's just going to piss people off even more. Yeah, you may get what you want, but it won't be out of support, but it won't be out of fear. Fear of being cancelled, fear of not being re-elected, fear of losing your job if you speak up against them. America is built on democracy. What I am seeing right now is not a democracy but a dictatorship. If you don't agree with us, then you are done. We're going to cancel you and burn down your business. The rioting and looting was the dumbest thing to do and should have been condemned by BLM. People say, oh, the business have insurance, they can rebuild. First off, how are people supposed to go grocery shopping etc. if you burn down the businesses in your neighborhood? Secondly, when things like this happen, businesses don't usually come back. I'm from Newark, New Jersey. Back in the 60s we had similar riots that lasted for days because of a rumor that a black man was beaten by the police. You can look the story up as it's still a big event in history. But what I'm getting at is that my city is just now recovering from an event that happened over 50 years ago. These cities will never be the same, and I don't mean that in a good way. Jobs will not return and these businesses are gone forever to never return. I want to be accepted for who I am. Not because the government or BLM said you have to or suffer the consequences. The way they are going about this is causing a bigger racial divide more than ever and is counterproductive in what they're trying to achieve. Dr. Martin Luther King said, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Black Lives Matter don't want that. They want special treatment for being born black. I want to get where I am because of my hard work. Not because I had to be hired to hit a black quota. I'm rambling and don't want to make this too long. But I wanted to get my opinion out there because me and others like me feel our voices are being stifled. And we are afraid to speak up because any deviation of opinion will get us cancelled, which is not right and makes this country no longer the democracy it used to be. TLDR, Black Lives Matter is going about things the wrong way to bring change. I'm black and never felt oppressed because of my race. Things will get worse if we remain on this path. Edit, here's proof I am a black man for those stating I am a fake account. I will not apologize for not fitting into your narrative. Because of the selectiveness of the media, I'm not sure if this is a popular or not popular opinion. But I agree with it and commend you, sir, for expressing. I think it is a decently popular opinion that people typically might not be allowed to have for fear of the mob. Agreed. I'd say it's the silent majority. It seems like a lot of people agree with this in private, but don't express it, especially if they're not black, due to fear of being labeled a racist, cancel culture, etc. Yup. This is probably how the majority of people feel based on their life experiences, but they can't voice it because it goes against the momentum of the current cause, which, by the way, I still support sans the unrelated looting. I'd argue that it's more popular than we realize, but those of us that have this opinion tend to stay quiet on these matters. As a black woman, I agree with this and also believe that BLM has had good intentions. What they need is reform. They can start by changing the name to Black Lives Matter too. That in of itself would gain a ton more support from skeptics, if that's the word. They need new leaders that would focus more on the inside of the black community and change from the inside out. BLM fails to do that, and until they do, I can't support them. 100%. And that too changes the entire perspective of the movement and would actually sound like something I probably can get behind. They have no type of direction for the top, and it shows. And you're correct, the black community do need to work on itself first before forcing others to accept if we can't even face that problems we have ourselves. Plus $1 million for the two. Wasting a lot of time having to explain why all lives matter is an incorrect response. Could have just been coherent from the start. Would have helped me figure out what was going on sooner. Here's the thing, people who don't understand what BLM means don't get it because they choose not to. People explain this all the time, it is apparent in everything BLM does. People who really think that BLM hates white people and doesn't think their lives matter will never get it, because they choose not to. There is no need to change your movement or your wording to accommodate people who will never be part of it. It's like people bashing Kaepernick. He said 100,000 times what he is kneeling for, but people still say he should explain why he was kneeling more. He did. People didn't listen. This is concern trolling. I agree with your message, but you need to change this, and that or people won't get on board with you. BLM is only growing, and we have seen more actual change to policies and procedures of police departments in the past couple weeks than ever before. How can people say they aren't effective? I don't see why there is any confusion with the original phrase Black Lives Matter. It's not only Black Lives Matter, it's not non-black lives don't matter, it states that black lives have value, not that non-black lives do not. If I say, I like to eat apples, does that imply that I don't like to eat any other fruit? Does that mean that I think all other foods are not as good as apples? Of course not. Same logic applies. I understand what you're saying, but let me see if I can give a different perspective to be considered. Yes, Black Lives Matter. No one is disputing that. The only people that think otherwise are those that are true racists and think every other race other than theirs is inferior, which is the true definition of racism. Note that I did not limit that to white people because to do so would be a fallacy. Using your analogy of liking apples, if you were to say, I like apples, it implies that you prefer apples to every other fruit, not that you like only apples. If you were to say, I like fruit, which is a generalized statement, the implication is that your like for apples is included and has equal amounts of like in your book. Of late, it appears, though maybe not intentionally, that the BLM organization's statement is that Black Lives Matter more than anyone else's, which is also false, and if you don't agree, you're racist. If you're not with us, you're against us. When someone says all lives matter, I think they're trying to convey the message that they include black lives as well. That, to them, all lives, regardless of race, religion, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, etc., matter to them. That they're all important and should all be treated equally. If that's the case, how is that a bad thing? That's a great idea. I've never thought of it being put that way. It would certainly help people understand the importance and difference of the meaning. I think a lot of people get caught up on the fact that they think it means only. But by using to, that hones in on the meaning so much better. Really a great idea. Love that you added the two. It keeps the core message while casting aside all the dumb bullshit that tags along with it. Most good people instinctively want to support BLM the group because the proposition that the lives of people with a certain shade of skin matter is self-evident. Of course Black lives matter because all lives are unique and special. That's the central tenet of the Christian religion. We were all created as unique individuals by God. The Western world is founded on this notion. It took us some time to work out the kinks, but we've gone further towards equality under the law than any civilization in recorded history. And I'm terrified that we're all so upset and desperate that we might move backward. We've fought too hard to get to where we are now. Are all Black lives matter? Media doesn't care and Chicago politicians do nothing as innocent civilians get hurt. Thanks for sharing this. Would you agree that we've gone backwards as a society in racial equality because of identity politics? I feel that groups like BLM are pointing out race all the time and looking for racism so hard that they're pushing a false narrative and dividing us all. Society needs unity, not division, and constantly looking for the differences we have because of race seems to me like the opposite of MLK's famous speech. Compared to 10 years ago, I find I'm more prone now to see a doctor, bus driver, etc. who is Black, as a Black doctor, Black bus driver instead of just a doctor or bus driver. That's not progress in my opinion. Absolutely. I feel that way too. I feel now it's on the last step into a wrong. People will feel that they need to treat me differently because I'm Black or tread lightly. I just want to be treated as a human being, an American. Playing politics has definitely made things worse, mainly to blame Dems. Now I'm no conservative or Democrat, but I'm just stating what I've seen in the media. I'm actually really afraid that in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see this movement claim that Black equality isn't possible in our world, and then they're going to push for reintroducing segregation for the benefit of Black people. I'm probably going to cry on that day. I agree. It's almost like reverse racism. I don't know if this is the right term, where there's some sort of social obligation to treat Black people better. I.e. hiring, uni quotas, etc. While obviously this is much better than 50 years ago where they were discriminated against, we are still making it about race, rather than trying to treat people as equals. I do acknowledge that Black people in general face more disadvantages in many ways, but we should be aiming to treat people as equals and individuals, and help those who need it. Yeah, I have been feeling that as well. I have been out of school for a bit, but I DK how I'm gonna feel around my Black friends when I go back. I'm gonna try my best to treat it as we were, but even that's going to be ingenuine. BLM is putting a light on what was darkness, and now we see it. No org is going to be perfect, but the hate the BLM gets, it is obvious that people are upset even by a group existing that believes Blacks are treated differently than whites. Just look at All Lives Matter counter-protest, which only happened near BLM, never see them protesting a white person being killed. We have gone backwards as a society because what was the traditional power structure is changing. Technology is empowering those who used to be victims. As a person of color living in Sweden, my blood boils when often well-meaning people try to put me in a victim category. I refuse to identify myself as a victim just because of my skin color. When you do that, you are treating me differently based on my skin color. And that's actually real racism. As you say, MLK quote should be the golden rule no matter if the intention is negative or positive segregation. You are a good man, Op. I have a lot of respect for you. Man, I gotta say, this is the best post I've ever seen on here. It's purely constructive, there's no blind hate and the whole thing is thought. I gotta process my thoughts, but I just wanted to say this in case Op sees this. I wonder if these affluent white kids in places like Seattle have even met a Black person. I live in a majority Black county in Alabama, and I hate seeing these people who live in 95% white areas act like they know what the Black community needs. Fellow Black guy here with similar sentiments as you. I believe this country is founded on the ability to change yourself and start from nothing to becoming something. I literally had less than $100 in the bank 4 years ago after graduating college. Ended up going to grad school, found scholarships, and now have my first full-time job right before COVID. Now I'm debt-free and finally have something I can call wealth along with a secure job. I could have complained about racial oppression, but this would have amounted to getting nowhere ahead. In my county in Utah, less than 1% of the population is Black. 95% of the population is white. The remainder is mixed ethnicity, Asian, Indian, and Middle Eastern ancestry, but no single group large enough to be mentioned. The police here are still the leading cause of homicide in my state. More than drugs, gangs, etc. And tied with domestic partner violence. They're also known to change flat tires and deliver milk and formula to people in need. I like a lot of the initiatives I see about changing how the police handle the mentally ill or requiring more training on de-escalation. It can be really hard work. I'd like to see the return of the beat cop, who walks the neighborhood and actually knows the community rather than being a distant authority figure. I'd like to see the police act like cops and not paramilitary groups stationed in communities. We don't need a standing army in charge of traffic tickets.